And we're live. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along once again to the How to Stay Sane webcast with me, Barbara Scully. We are now broadcasting live on Twitter and on Facebook and on YouTube. So come on in. I can see people joining. So come on in and find yourself a comfy chair. I hope you've got a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of something or whatever it is that you want, and sit back and relax for the next 30 minutes. I want to welcome also those of you who will watch this back after the broadcast. I know a lot of you do that, so thank you also for joining us. And finally, I want to especially welcome listeners to this program on Dublin South FM. This webcast will go out as a radio program on Saturday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So if you're listening there, you are very welcome along. It's great to have your company also. If you do enjoy these webcasts, you could spread the word. That would be doing me a great favor, and share the links across the social media platforms and the old fashioned way, word of mouth. And if you're curious about any previous episodes, they are all now available on my website, which is barbarascully.com. So you can watch back any of them whenever you wish to. This episode will also go up there tomorrow and will be available to watch back if you, again, want to share it afterwards. So this week I thought we deserved a bit of a maybe virtual treat and a bit of escapism. We're starting to taste a little bit of a small bit of extra freedom was granted to us this week with the removal of the 5K limit. We're now allowed to travel within our county, which benefits some of us more than others, including the man who is sitting beside me here. More in a moment. But anyway, as we start to taste maybe a little bit of freedom, I think a lot of us are turning our minds again to travel and to the possibility of travel, and when it'll happen and how it'll happen, and what is there any new and different products that might come up in the coming months that we can look forward to. So I have asked to join me today, and I'm delighted that he said yes, a former colleague of mine, Mr. Pat Dawson, who is CEO of the ITAA, the Irish Travel Agents Association. Pat, down in Cork, you're very welcome. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for joining me today.
Thank you very much,
As I was
Barbara.
just saying, you're down in Cork, which means that you can travel a lot further than some of us can, with being able to wander around that beautiful county.
Yeah, I mean, I can get in my car or whatever and drive from here to West Cork, which I know you it's one of your favourite spots, and it's a beautiful, beautiful area. And I think it's about I can drive probably about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, right down to the far end of Cork. So we certainly have that in mind. And from my accent, you know, I'm not from Cork because my accent would be a lot higher than the locals as such, but. We've been here now for over 30 years as such, and our three kids were born here, and two live here in Cork, and one live in the state of Florida as such. So we love it down here.
Excellent. And are you local yet, or are you still a bit of a blow-in?
You're always a blow-in, Barbara, down in Cork. You know, yeah. But I would, support Cork teams, and I'm very much. One thing I got involved in, which is unusual, probably. I got involved in a great hockey club in Cork, and with some of those players that played in our club, who played for Ireland in the World Cup and that. So we got very much
Oh, wow.
involved, and we're a sports family. Sort of, it's one of the things we love to do.
Excellent. So you're well entrenched there. Listen, as we were waiting to go live, you mentioned something to me that I have to start by asking you, because otherwise I won't be able to concentrate on the other stuff that I want to ask you. And that is, you mentioned the fact that you're not originally from Cork, you're originally from the Midlands, from Carlow. But you also mentioned in passing, and I want to hear a little bit more about it, is the fact that your mother, who was mother to, did you say 7 children,
Correct. 7 children. Yes.
became, towards the latter end of her life, a Reverend Mother?
That's correct, Barbara. Yeah, that's correct. Would you believe that? She was professed in Cork by the recent bishop, Bishop Buckley. She went to London for a holiday, as she told us, and we didn't. And then she said, "Look, I'll stay on here because I like it." And then we discovered a year later that she was over there studying to become a nun at 65 years of age, because she was a school teacher for all her life. And she was professed a nun, and I gave her away. You're the oldest. It's an old-fashioned. I gave her away on the 6 o'clock RT news, because she was the first grandmother to be given away and become a Reverend Mother. And she ran a convent that was associated with Home and Home here in Cork. It was association with UCC, yeah, and I told some journalists, I was saying beforehand in the Examiner about it, and they didn't believe me. But the following day, the Irish Times had it, and they had a photograph. And also the late Jerry Ryan, she was voted because one of the grandchildren put her forward as Granny of the Year, and she won that on the late Jerry Ryan show as well. So she was far more famous than I am.
She sounds like an interesting woman. That's amazing. And is
Yeah.
she still with us, Pat?
No, we lost her. We lost her now 11 years ago. But she got a great run. She was 91 years of age when she passed. So she was a great, and she was very strong and very strong-willed, and she'd do things. I mean, I can remember that I got a letter from. I studied in Carlow Regional College and I studied accountancy. And I remember getting a letter that I had applied for a job in some company in Dublin, but I hadn't applied at all. She had applied for the job on my behalf. So she was a character, that's for sure. But she was devoted to her religion and loved it. And she didn't drink or smoke or anything like that, but she was as good a crack as anybody.
God, it's gas. I think we've such a one-dimensional, sometimes visual in our head about nuns, and they are as different as we all are to each other. And she certainly sounds like an amazing.
Yeah,
there's a whole book in that, Pat. If you ever decide to write somebody's story, that's a great story.
A small story. We were up in at the time up in Dublin, and we were in Grafton Street, and you remember the Brown Thomas beautiful windows they used to have, and there was 3 kids were with us, myself, my wife, and she was there dressed in a robe and so forth. So we're looking at the window, and there was crowds of people around us. And the next thing, one of the kids said, "Granny, we'll move out of here." And all the people couldn't believe that we're calling a nun a granny. But that's just one of the funny incidents that happened. So it's something special. Yeah,
she sounds like somebody very special.
Indeed.
Back to the business in hand, and as I said in the introduction, you're CEO of the ITAA, the Irish Travel Agents Association, which I think is celebrated 50 years last year, as far as I know. So congratulations on that. This has been a very bruising year for the travel trade. I think along with kind of live entertainment, it's more or less been a goner since the get-go. You know, we all talk about the different levels of lockdown, but travel really has been decimated from the start of this over a year ago.
We have, it's March. I remember the day about the 12th of March when first cases started to appear in the UK or wherever. And yes, it has been terrible on the industry, and most of the industry, as you know from your experience, are small SME companies run by families for many, many years. Certainly we have big companies, and you know, it's people think that agents are finished with the internet, but we're all on the internet now. And I mean, we turn about 1.6 billion every year, bonded by the Commission of Aviation, and certainly it has been the worst ever. And you know, as an association, we've put in a very, very tough time with our members as such, and we've been, you know, we spend most of all the year, you know, fighting to get some help from the government. We have some help already, but it's not near enough such, and we feel very sore about that, because I think we're being victimized by parts of the government. The fact that we're selling outbound, but as you know, that without outbound you won't have inbound, and when we start up, the tourists will come back into Ireland, and they're worth 11 billion to Ireland at the moment, and the sooner it starts safely, the better for all of us.
And it's very much a part of, I mean, I think the whole thing of travel is very much part of the Irish psyche, possibly because we live on this very small island in a very wet, damp corner of the North Atlantic. So, you know, to feel that you have been in some way kind of ignored by government is ignoring something that I think is intrinsic in us. I think Irish people like to travel, and what I get crazy about listening to some of the conversation around all of this is that travel, certainly a lot of it is about holidays, but not all of it is about holidays. Do you know, there's travel for all kinds of reasons that you do the services of a travel agent for.
Yeah,
you know, travel to see
family. You have family in Australia. I know you have a daughter there and grandchildren. and I have the same in the States as such. And and then of course, the big thing that's missed is the corporate travel as such, and
Yes.
the amount of business travel agents. The vast majority of companies do travel organized by travel agents and such, and that's huge. We actually one of our members would look after all the government travel. So I mean, and there are people experts that have to come in to Ireland, and we have to go there to deal with companies in Europe and all over the world, and it's massive. And the tourism itself, I mean, we fill the outbound and they fill the inbound, and that's 11 million. And there's 450,000 people with all the aviation. And can you imagine all the pilots, the crews, and the airports? I mean, and the big worry I would have, certainly Dublin Airport, because it's such a fine big airport with 32 million passengers. But the likes of Cork, Shannon, and Knock, they're going to struggle. And for airlines to come back in there, I mean, we've got to regionalise. We've got to have airports, outside of Dublin, because 32 million is a tremendous figure, as you know. I remember 20 years ago, it wasn't even 10 or 12 million. So it's a fantastic success, but it's certainly, they're down on their knees at the moment. There is help, yes, but I mean, travel agents have to work differently. We can't close up a pub and go home. I mean, we've 400,000 people who were booked for last summer. We changed them to this summer to go. It looks like now we visualize that maybe it might get on its feet. All things being equal, and vaccinations, we could talk for an hour, maybe in September at best. So all those people in the summer will have to be changed again next summer, and that. So it's a mess, Barbara. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess. You mentioned there a few moments ago about, and I think there's great parallels between the travel industry and travel agents and the internet and books. When the internet came on, kind of got up and running first, and people were using e-readers and Kindles reading books, they said it'll be the end of publishing. People won't, there won't be any need for a publisher, and everybody be reading on Kindle, and that hasn't been the case. And I think it's the same with travel agents, that, initially it was like, sure, everybody can book their own flights and book their own everything, so you don't need the services of a travel agent. And I mean, I think listening to you talk about the response of the business to this current disaster reminds me of other disasters that there have been around the world. For example, the Icelandic volcano, or when there's a terrorism incident or a war somewhere or something, a disaster somewhere, and people have to be moved. This is when travel agents really come into their own, and really, that's the time when you really think, God, I'm so glad I booked with a travel agent who can handle all of that stuff.
Yeah, and we're there 24/7, and also, which is very, very important, that as you know, Barbara, we're fully protected and government licensed and bonded, so your money is safe. No airline, by the way, if an airline goes out of business tomorrow morning, your money is gone. End of story, because there's no cover for that. But we're there as a service, and I mean, I don't know how many people that phoned our office up during the whole summer who had particularly booked with companies outside of Ireland, English companies, French companies, and so forth and so on. They've been trying for weeks and weeks to get through. They're pulling out their hair. They lost so many hundreds of thousands of euros because they couldn't make contact. And then they booked accommodation that they couldn't get out of. So it has been horrendous on holidaymakers as well. And many of them, flights flew. We call them ghost flights. And the government were saying that you cannot fly, yet the airplanes flew. And because they weren't cancelled, the money was gone. And we're working with the EU and with our body in the EU to try and change that, because thousands and thousands of people couldn't get back their money because the government didn't allow them to fly, and rightly so, by the way. I'm not blaming the government, because it's too dangerous to fly as such. And from that point of view, it has been very tough on people, and all hard-earned money, maybe losing their job on part-time or whatever else. So we all have to think about them.
And Pat, you mentioned there a few moments ago about how that people who were booked for last summer then changed over to this summer, and now it's looking like really we won't be back traveling, as you said, with all things being equal, and if things go according to plan, and if we don't hit any bumps in the road, that it could be September. Is there, have you seen, or have you as an organization in your heads got an idea of how that is going to happen? We hear talk about vaccination passports that, you know, people will have, if they've been vaccinated, will have some kind of passport that will enable them then to travel freely.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
something that is being considered?
Yeah, Barbara, that will happen as such. There'll be a green certificate or you know, or passport or whatever word you want to call it. That will
Yeah,
certainly happen. And I know there are meetings today in Brussels today with transport people, and that will happen. It's a matter of it has to be lined up and it has to work. It has to be recognised all over the world, because we have an awful lot of traffic to the States and Australia and all over the world. So that has to be done. And you know, and it has to be done fairly and properly, you know, kids and families and all that kind of stuff. Yes, that will happen. And it's going to be the only real safe way of traveling. And, you know, there's a big market for cruises at the moment. And cruise ships now will only let people on who show their vaccination and show their card. And I think, you know, I think, for example, you know, older people, for want of a better word, you know, might get going and might be fully vaccinated. Well, we're guessing 2 months' time, and surely you can't hold them up before a 40-year-old is done, you know,
yes,
because
yeah, yeah.
we've been so much held up anyway that and the economy has to get going again, because you
Absolutely.
know, we're spending probably 15-20 billion a year on it as such, and rightly so. But we have to get back, and the country has to get back on its feet.
And I suppose then logistically, that is something that, because of the nature of travel, if there is some kind of cert or passport or whatever you want to call it, it has to be standardized. It has to be something that
Absolutely.
is recognizable form, really around all the way around the world.
Yeah, and you know, you saw where the Brexit and all the trouble with the North and bus and the drivers with their trucks, and where certificates and documentation. You know yourself that if documentation is wrong going from one country and another, it causes havoc and chaos. And certainly, like as a government, and we have said this to the government, and we've met so many ministers, you wouldn't believe. We've said now is the time that you need to have a plan in place
Yes.
for getting going, no matter what it is, September, October. But the planning needs to be done now. We can't have like the quarantine in hotels, lastminute.com. You see where that can go wrong as such.
Yeah.
Same thing is, like we meet pilots, and we're talking to some Aer Lingus pilots, and they said to us that for them to get back in the air, that it'll take them 3 months, and they'll only have 45% of the fleet in air, because there's retraining, all the simulation going on. So there's a big job of work, and we need to start now. To start if we get going in September.
Yeah. And are you hopeful yourself, Pat, personally? Are you hopeful that things will start to move in September?
I am, yeah. I would back September. Like now, the confidence has been shook out of me with the vaccination problem, because we
Yeah.
don't know where that's going to go. But certainly, looking at the worst case scenario, maybe I might be thinking October now. But certainly, we'll get away by the back end of the year, for sure, providing we don't have any other
Yeah.
disasters along the way.
Yeah. And do you think that this whole period of this, you know, the whole last year, and it'll be the guts of 2 years, certainly 18 months by the time we're kind of coming out of it properly. Do you think it'll change what people are looking for when they go to travel? Will it change the type of holiday people want? Because I know in your press release, that which I'll talk to you about in a moment, around the passports day, you talk about a pent up, you know, this pent up need to travel, which I think it
Mm.
is. I think most people are chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
Um, and do you think it'll change what people are looking for or how they're going to travel?
Yeah, I do really, and I mean, you know, we'll have you know, the sort of bones of this pandemic left with us for you know, for a couple of years, and certainly we see it already, and we even see it in. I've one of the family involved in a hotel in Ireland, and they happen to have houses, and they're fully booked, you know,
Right.
self catering and stuff like that. And you know, certainly there has been a big go on villas or houses. You know, okay, villas for the ordinary person folk. I mean, we can't afford that kind of luxury, but loads of people can. But yes, I think it will be, and I think it'll be spaced out. And whether you're going to pack 700 or 800 people in a restaurant, abroad anymore. Who knows, or in a bar, but it depends on how good the vaccine is, but it'll be certainly definitely different than before, and flying is going to be different than before as such. And I think mask wearing is going to be with us, buses, coaches, airplanes. I think it's going to be with us for a long, long time. Remember, we used to lose many people with the Irish flu as such. And I don't know if anyone got the flu in Ireland this year. And again, it's social distancing and the masks. So it's going to be different, Barbara, yes.
Yeah. Jesus, Pat, you think they might get more leg room? Give us more leg room while they're at it, in spacing us out a bit. That'd be great.
I'm afraid it's going to get worse, and it infuriates me. I mean, airlines that have one thing that drives me scatty is, the little pocket in front of you to put in your phone or your book or your glasses. It drives me insane. Or a newspaper. I won't go with airlines that don't. I just won't go. Now it might sound finicky. But I think it's such pain. I won't use bad language on the phone or in front of people, but I think it's crazy. And I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go with an airline that operates like that.
Yeah,
and there has to be. There's all this thing of we all talk about the airfares going back 40 years ago in London. Everyone talks about London was 300, 400 euros or pounds at the time, but when it comes to it, by the time you add up, like if we think back in the day when you got a nice seat, you got a nice meal and everything else, and now by the time you add all this, this from 1999, that you have to be struck by lightning twice to get that, as far as I'm concerned. but the thing about it is, look, normal fares to Spain now are 300 euros. And this thing of this pathetic thing of people, and you've seen it, stuffing their coats and their trousers or whatever else they have into another. It's pathetic, really. But that's the way it's gone, and I think the standard of aviation, it's a race to the bottom, in my view. It's a race to the bottom, and there's no comfort.
I think that this whole pause that we've had in life is going to affect lots of different industries. And I wonder, will it make us try to do things better, that everything won't just be about the bottom line and as you say, this kind of race to the bottom, that we'll actually try to add value in different ways and make the product something that is more attractive to people,
I really, Barbara, I think people now, once it's not mad, crazy money, once it's reasonable, but I think people will buy up a little bit, not a fortune up, but they'll buy up a little bit to get that comfort. And they're probably saying to themselves, particularly the older people, look, at the hell with it, I want a bit of comfort. I don't want to be hassled and things being forced on me, buy this, buy that, and so forth. And I think people, after going through this, people realize, look, we need a bit of comfort and a bit of love, more love in life, and the hell with the money, because money is nothing. And they're saying, okay, I'll spend an extra 50 euros for the sake of a bit of comfort. And definitely, I think that's a lesson that I think we've learned. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. And I think if you're a student backpacker, you can do all that nonsense. But I think most of the rest of us, would be willing to pay a little bit extra for a little bit extra. And I think that would be important. Where's your first place, Pat? Once we get the green light and we can start getting on a flight, where is one of your favorite places that you'll head back to?
I fly into Malaga. I get a train to a village called Arroyo de la Mil, and I go up there, and it's all local Spanish people. And I have an interest in. I love Spain. Spain is my number one. I've always loved it, and I got a wine license. Would you believe, to sort of import wine just as a hobby? And I love Spanish wines. My drinking habits have gone way down in the last year, but however, and I love the food, and I love the people, and the weather. So, and then from where I live, Cork Airport is a lovely airport just up the road. From a door here to a door there is 3 hours, and that does me fine. Does me fine.
So that
would
be where you're.
Yeah, and it's a lovely. I love all parts of Spain, and I, you know, we go we go to Florida. That's a different kettle of fish out there, where we have family and grandchildren out there. But certainly Spain and Spain and second would be Portugal.
Yeah, yeah, you can't beat Spain.
No,
I'm a
no,
huge
no.
Spanish lover as well. And I was just saying to my husband the other day, I would love to do a road trip around Andalusia. We went to Seville a couple of years ago and I loved it, but I'd love to
Yeah,
get to Granada and Ronda and Cordoba and all those other places.
yeah, yeah. We have a conference every year, and we've done all those cities, Cordoba
Beautiful.
and Seville, and they're just and like, you know, the price of things, even the high end of things. One of
Yeah,
the other typical place I would say to people to go is, again, if you're, I'm not a big foodie. I mean, I love nice food, and I'm not expensive caviar or anything like that. But I mean, San Sebastian, Barbara, and the
in the
northern
north.
Spain is really, really gorgeous. Now it's cooler than down south, but it's really gorgeous. It's the people are so nice, and like and the town of San Sebastian. I was there. I was there going back in the day. When I worked for Dawson Travel, my son runs now, but Munster were playing a big match, rugby match in the stadium in San Sebastian, and there was 10,000 Munster people over there for a couple of days, and it's really striking all that northern coast of Spain, and it's not too hot either, and of course you have the Camino walks and all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend northern Spain, city like Bilbao. It's gorgeous as well. So all up there, but I am
That's a
biased.
really that's a really good tip because a lot of people don't ever think of northern Spain. We do tend to think of the south when we think of.
Yeah, yeah, and we had a conference also in northern Portugal in a lovely city called Oporto, and it was really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, lovely, lovely. Come here, just before, because time is flying away here. Are you a man for watching the telly or the
Yes,
Netflix or
yeah,
what?
yeah. Well, the telly, Netflix. Technically, now I wouldn't be the best in the world, and that, but certainly tele. I would be a person of television. Yeah, yeah, I
And
do.
what are you watching at the moment? What have you watched recently that you'd recommend?
Well, I'm more sported than anything else from a point of view of series. Well, I might sound strange, but I do get a great laugh out of Dad's Army. I do get a great laugh out of that. I really do. And
Is that still on somewhere?
yes, yeah, yeah. And but I really, and I know it's old fashioned. I know it's all of that, but
Gentle
I still
humor.
I still cry laughing at it because the things are so stupid and it's so innocent fun. I like that wit, you know, and you know the comedies I really like, and I'm a news junkie and business affairs, and I would watch the different, you know, prime times and all this, you know, all this type of shows, and with the job, I mean, I have to sort of keep abreast of what's
What's
going
going
on
on?
around the place, you know, and
Yeah,
that's where I really hang with that.
yeah, yeah. And do you read, Pat?
I don't know. I read newspapers now, and I buy newspapers as such, and be it Examiner, and I will buy the Times and at the weekend as such. No, I have my daughter gave me Barack Obama's book, right, and I saw it somewhere, and I mentioned it in passing, and but the bad thing about it is that there's about 800 or 900 pages, and reading it, you nearly break your wrists. And I think I'm getting rheumatism from reading it. I've only got to about 300 pages as such, but I enjoy that sort of fiction. I'm not great at, you know, but
No.
I like reading, you know, autobiographies and stuff like that, factual stuff.
And got me with the days when we had holiday brochures.
Oh yeah, yeah. Copy with today's and the JWT set and the brochures used to
That's
come
right.
out.
That's that's where I met you first.
Yeah, yeah. And
Like a
I
long,
yeah,
long time
long
ago,
time
Pat.
ago. Yeah, yeah. And I'm still to this day, and you would know them, friendly with an awful lot of the people who were back in our day. Thankfully, most of them are with us, and I still very, very close friends with a lot of ex JWT, and
But
you know, they were great days, great days.
They were great days, and obviously we were all children back then. We
Yeah,
were only
yeah.
very, 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 very young. But it really was an exciting time to be part of the travel business because it was the real start of. And I don't know if you saw, and actually, if you didn't, you need
I
to
did.
watch it back. Did you see the way we
Yeah,
were?
yeah,
And
I
it
did.
was
Yeah, it was great, and Mr. Walsh, as we knew him, like he was a pioneer, and as you know, Gillian Bowler as well, who was a wonderful,
yes,
wonderful pioneer as well, and she did wonderful work. And in fact, the story about Gillian and Joe Walsh was we used to call him the boss, and this thing came up about going to Greece and so forth and so on. And how Gillian started off was that Joe was flying an aircraft to Athens, and he brought me in and he said, "Pat, this thing is not going well," and blah blah blah. And so rather than cancel the flight, he said, "Look, I must look around and see if there anybody else that might." And he came across Gillian, who was only starting off, like she wasn't even into chartering or anything like that. And he gave her to save him, of course, in the sense that the flight wasn't filling.
yeah, it suited
He
him.
gave Gillian 30 seats and started her off. And
I
little,
never knew that.
yeah, little did we all know that she became the biggest tour operator. And you remember, like in Baggage Street, to be all lying on the floor all night waiting for free holidays or whatever else. But
That's
you
right.
wouldn't do it now because you'd probably be put in jail, as such. But
Yeah, she was a real innovator. She was
yeah,
really innovative,
she was
and she
great. Yeah,
really she did things totally differently. But of course, Joe Walsh in his day was an innovator as well. I think the
yeah,
whole.
yeah. He was,
I mean,
and he built a great company. And yeah, I mean, you probably remember that we had a what they call a chart room, and we had all these carousels, and we had 60,000 passengers, and each carousel thing you put out was an airplane, as
yeah,
such, and
that's
that's how
right.
we controlled it
That's right.
manually, as such. And now it's just doodly
It's
dee
all
and doodly do.
computerized.
Yeah, but they were great, and we traveled a good bit, and we met great friends, and we met a lot of Spanish friends, Italian friends, and
That's
they
right.
used to come back for conferences, as you know. So, well, they were the best days of my life, I have to say. And
Oh,
I was with Joe for well, I think I was with over 20 years. In fact, the reason I came to Cork, first of all, was because Mr. Walsh asked me to open up their Cork office, which I did in
yeah.
Patrick Street. All it's gone now, but they were great days,
They
fantastic days.
were great days. They really were great days. And the days when, Dublin Airport was a lot smaller and there was very little security and it was so laid back and so easygoing. And
Yeah,
we were very lucky, I think, to be
we
part of
were,
it.
we were, we
Great
were.
memories. And I can see Kathy Sherry is watching. And
Happy, yeah.
Aileen Eglinton says, fair play, Reverend Pat. Is there a reason why she's referring to you as Reverend Pat?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm after letting the cat out of the bag because I usually keep a low key. Well, it never comes up really about my mum, but I said I'd say it to you anyway now that we're chatting.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
It's brilliant, and there's more to that story, Pat. I think, as I say, when you finally retire, I think maybe you need to write that story because your mother sounds like a really interesting woman, and that's a great way to bring us back to where we started.
yeah,
So listen, I really thoroughly enjoyed the chat. It's been interesting and it's been positive,
yeah,
and I hope that you're right, and I'm sure everybody who's watching us will hope that you're right that we will start being able to move beyond our own country's borders before the year is out, and
yeah.
that travel agents will be busy again and providing the wonderful service that they provide to us in this country. And they are a very important part of our economy. So, the best of good luck and
Thank
continued
you.
success in your role as Chief Executive of the Travel Agents Association. And again, thank you so much for taking the time. It was great to see you and it was great to chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, thank you all for watching
Thank
as
you.
well. I'll be back here next week with another guest for another chat. And in the meantime, keep staying safe and staying sane and mind yourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks a